when you had that white hard hat on, you had authority. And I have seen it over and over again on jobs where the foreman in the white hard hat would tell the lineman, go do this, even though it was unsafe, and they did it just because the foreman told them. Authority is a powerful thing. It's not something to be taken for granted.
Okay, welcome to the Electrical Safety Podcast. I'm your host, John Travis, and today I'm speaking with Brandon Wylie. He's the VP of Power Delivery Programs at Northwest Lineman College. Brandon, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah, our pleasure. I guess just to get the ball rolling, people always like to hear, your background and sort of how you got into the industry and how you ended up where you are today. So you can jump in, start wherever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got into the industry as a child, I guess you could say, because my dad is a lineman. He worked for a cooperative in Western Georgia called Greystone Power. So he started there in 1977. I was born in 76, so I was in it and around it for a long time. I remember growing up with him, going on storms. One of the first memories I have is Hurricane Hugo that hit Charleston, South Carolina back in, I think it was 88 or so. And then, of course, the blizzard of 93 that kind of wrecked the South and especially Atlanta. He worked for weeks and weeks on end on that one. But interestingly enough, I did not want to be a lineman. But when I was growing up, when I was in high school, I was an athlete. I wanted to, of course, pursue sports. I think every athlete wants to do that. So that was my goal, was to pursue sports in some form. And so I thought college was the best thing for me. I went to school and was going to go into sports medicine or physical therapy. And then I kind of went into computers, and then it ended up, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Nothing appealed to me. So backed out of college, and it took a little bit longer. And finally my dad said, hey, why don't you just try being a lineman? Just let me get you on. Pike Electric was a contractor for them. So he said, let me just get you on over here and just see if you like it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because day number one, I knew it was for me. I knew this is it. And it just kind of hit me. And you just have this feeling like, wow, what have I been missing all this time? A pretty cool story. The first day that I get there, and I'm scared to death. I'm 21 years old, and I show up at where all the trucks are parked and meet my general foreman, and he gives me the safety manual and the hard hat and all your rubber gloves and all your safety stuff. And
yeah,
he says, come on, let me take you out here. I'll let you meet your crew. So we walk up on this group of guys, and they're all standing in a circle, and this is a gravel parking lot, and they're all standing in a circle around two other guys that are wrestling in the gravel at like 6:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So we walk in, and I'm like, what in the world am I gotten into? And he says, well, see the guy on the bottom, that's your foreman, and the guy on top is your lead lineman. So when they get done, I'll introduce you to them. So they got finished kind of beating each other up for a minute. They got up and dusted themselves off, and I met them, and it was like, this is it, man. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So I worked there for 2 years and then went to Marietta Power, which is the largest municipal utility in Georgia, just kind of northwest of Atlanta suburb, and worked there for 7 years, made first class lineman. And then in 2007, I got the opportunity to get into training. And I wanted to get into training for a while. I went through an apprenticeship program, and I liked that environment. I liked the teaching. I liked my instructor. So I just needed more experience. So when I got the opportunity, I went into training in 2007 and been in that field ever since. That was with Distribution Services was the name of the company then. And then we formed Electric Cities of Georgia and worked there as a safety and training specialist, made it up to director of training and safety, ran the apprenticeship program, and then August of 2022, I got the opportunity to come over to Northwest Lineman College, and that was another dream come true and another opportunity that was incredible. Uh, Came over as Vice President of Power Delivery Programs, which is our distance learning apprenticeship curriculum. So a lot of schools out there that run apprenticeship programs, we provide their curriculum. We write it in house, and it's well formatted, put together. So I was VP over that program, and recently I took a position as program executive of the Quanta apprenticeships. So Quanta Services is our parent company. They acquired Northwest Lineman College in 2017, and they have a lot of operating units, contractor companies across the country. So we're looking at a couple of thousand apprentices in the program probably this year and next. So I've kind of taken on that role recently, but um, yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. 25 years in this, been a good journey.
That's awesome. Okay. So let me ask you, looking at some of your stuff here, and first question I was thinking about was, what is it about asking why that's so important
Yeah,
for safety?
yeah, that's big for me. So in order to really understand why you're in this industry, you gotta really dig deep. And when you ask why do you do this? You ask a lineman, why are you a lineman? Why'd you get into this? And a lot of times they'll say something like, for the money. Yeah, I get that, but that's not why you're doing this. You can make money doing a lot of other things that you're not out in the weather and working Christmas Day when it's 20 degrees outside and you're missing your family. I mean, you can make money doing other stuff. So no, why do you do this? And it's not an easy answer, and everybody's a little bit different. So for me, my why started way back in 1995 when my dad was a lineman with Greystone, and one of his friends, coworkers, got injured on the job. Hydraulic fittings arced over a secondary service, and it ignited the hydraulic fluid and burned it severely. So I'm in college at the time, and my dad's calling me, and just to have somebody to talk to, and to kind of just to kind of let it out because he was having a hard time with it. And he lived for 2 more weeks, and then he passed away. And I didn't understand then how that affected me. I was a
Mhm.
college kid, and then in 2001, I had a coworker that was killed on the job with a street light circuit. He got in series with 120 volts, and he passed away that night. So that that formed my why of you can do this job safely and still be fast, because all linemen like to be fast, but you can do both. You can have the speed, but you can also be safe. So that's why I got into training. My why is about training and being able to teach the next generation of linemen that you don't have to take the shortcuts. You don't have to do the things that a lot of linemen out there do that are really unsafe. We've got to change that. Somebody at some point has got to go, we don't need to do that anymore. We can do this safely. And that's kind of where for my why. And everybody else is a little bit different, but I think discovering that and figuring that out really sets you on a good path.
I thought it was kind of interesting. In one of your things I was watching, you mentioned the Milgram experiment.
Yeah.
People that aren't familiar with that, could you walk us through maybe what that experiment is and then how you tie it to safety?
Yeah. So back in the 1960s, Stanley Milgram conducted an experiment where he would bring in he would bring in folks that he wanted to test, and his whole premise was, why do people do overtly unsafe or terrible things. It came from really from World War II, and why people were ordered to do terrible things, and they did them knowing that it was awful and they shouldn't do it. So what makes people do that? So he would bring the test subjects in, and then there was a guy in a white lab coat, and he was the teacher, or no, he was the teacher. He was the um, experimenter. And
Hmm.
then you had a learner who was in another room, and the teacher, who was the test subject, would ask the learner questions. And as they got the questions wrong, they would receive an electrical shock. Well, they weren't really receiving electrical shock. It was all fake. But the folks that they were experimenting on, they thought that they were delivering the shock, and it went from 50 volts to 450 volts. And incrementally, they would increase up. And every time they got an incorrect answer, they
Oh,
would
so
think it was shocking them.
when the student got the question wrong, somebody else was pressing the button to give them a shock.
Yeah, it was the one that it was the people that they brought in to to run the test on,
Hmm.
and they would press a button, and it's had big letters, electrical shock, danger, and all that stuff. And at some point, and every time they would give a shock, the person in the other room would usually scream or yell stop or this hurts or something to make the other person think, of course, they were being hurt, or
Yeah.
it was causing pain. And all of them would say, "Hey, I don't think this is right. I think I'm hurting the guy, or I think something's wrong." And the person in the white lab coat, the scientist, would say, "You must continue. If you don't continue, the experiment will be over." So that made the person go, "Well, if I don't want to be the one to cause trouble, I don't want to be the one to shut this down. I don't want to push back. So this person has some authority here. I guess I have to do it."
Hmm.
And they would continue up. And no one stopped less than 300 volts. Every single person went 300 volts, and 300 volts is lethal. 100, anything over 50 volts can be lethal, but 120 volts killed my friend.
Hmm.
So they're getting up to 300 volts. And then 60, I think 65% went all the way up, even though they thought that they killed the other person. They went all the way up.
Wow.
And the whole premise was authority. And in the lineman world, when I was coming up, when you made foreman of the crew, you were the crew leader. You got a white hard hat instead of a yellow hard hat.
Hmm.
And when you had that white hard hat on, you had authority. And I have seen it over and over again on jobs where the foreman in the white hard hat would tell the lineman, "Go do this," even though it was unsafe. And they did it just because the foreman told them.
Right.
Authority is a powerful thing, and it's not something to be taken for granted.
No. And so from there, I know you mentioned being very careful as a leader, as someone in authority of what you say. And so could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sometimes it's not necessarily what you say, but how you say it. Um, when you put the word "but" in a sentence, it's like everything before that is gone. Hey, make sure you do this job safe, but it has to be done today.
Hmm.
So when you add that word "but" in there, the person hears what's on the backside of that sentence. This has to be done today. So you tell a lineman, this has to be done today. It's going to get done today. And they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that happens, even if it means cutting corners and doing things unsafe, because it goes back to the Stanley experiment and the authority. A supervisor has told me this has to get done today. Well, yeah, but he also said, make sure you do it safely. He didn't hear that. So
Hmm.
if you just switch those, hey, look, this job, we really need it to be done today if possible, but don't do anything unsafe. Make sure you work safely all the time. So then just
Mhm.
reform in that sentence. You're saying the same thing, just reform the sentence. Put the emphasis on the safety side of it instead of the job completion side. They're going to get it done. They're going to get the job done, but make sure they do it safely.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Um, Let everybody know what you call an uh-oh day. What's that?
Oh yes. So an uh-oh day is it you so you're I'm trying to think of a good way to to form this. It's just where you really think everything's going to go great, and then all of a sudden the bottom falls out of it, and you're really trying to scramble to figure out, okay, how do I clean this up? Because this job was going great, it's going
Mhm.
smooth, everything was fine, and then bam, it's an uh-oh day, and you gotta fix that, and you got to start thinking on your feet. Things start happening quickly, and you have to react, and that's where your training comes in. And it's like the military. The military trains and trains and trains. And there's a lot of repetitive training. Well, in the line industry, also you need to have that. That's why we practice pull top and bucket rescue so frequently, and you need to take that serious because if you have that uh-oh day, then your training has to kick in, and you have to react, and if you can't fall back on your training, then it's just going to continue to go downhill from
Mhm.
there.
Kind of reminds me of a story I heard of he's like an ex-Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink. I'm sure you heard of him
Oh
before.
yeah, yeah.
And I'll probably butcher this, but he he kind of asked the guys in in the crew or whatever they're called, does everybody know how to reprogram the radio? And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, we know, yeah, we got it. And and the reason he's doing this is because he knows there's certain situations you get into that could save your life.
Hmm.
And he checks in again. Hey, do you know how to do it? Oh yeah, we got it. So one day, and he knows they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So one day he comes in and he asks one of the guys, hey, take out your radio. He grabs it, takes the battery out, pops it back in, gives it to him, says reprogram. Guy can't do it. Right. So he proves his point, and I think the next week everybody knows how to reprogram the radio. And where I'm going with this is, you mentioned training and retraining, but we also talk about leadership.
Mhm.
And so, in your position, you're at the college. How much, once these guys get out in the workforce and they're working for wherever, I don't know if you've got a beat on that at all, but you know, how good of a job do you think in general leaders, supervisors, general managers are doing, you know, keeping up with all the procedures? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it takes a conscious effort. It's so easy to get caught up in the everyday, the job completions, the work orders that are coming in and getting this done, and you've got pressure coming in from the top, and how many jobs have we got on the schedule, and this we know that we have this big job that they need to get energized quickly. It's just so easy to get caught up in that every day that it's really easy to push that training part back and not do those things because like your story about Jocko, and when you ask a lineman, do you know how to do pull top rescue? Oh yeah, yeah, I sure do.
Hmm.
Okay, do it. Here's your tools. I want to give you your tools. We're gonna hang a mannequin up here. I want you to get him down, and you can see the color leaves their face, and their eyes get big, like, oh, uh, you mean now? Yeah, yeah, right now. Where's he's hurt. You got to go get him down. And it's that, like I was talking about before. It's that where it's just a reaction. You go and then you almost put it in autopilot, and you're relying on your instincts at that point. There was a lineman that was injured. I remember my dad telling me this story that it was a pretty bad storm one night, and he went up and he climbed the pole. We're just two guys on the job. He climbed the pole. He goes up there, and they didn't check to make sure the line was de-energized. So he took an electrical shock, and he's upside down. He's still conscious, but he's hurt. And he, as an injured guy, had to calm the other person down because the other guy was getting his tools on, and he said, "No, no, don't climb up here. You got to de-energize the line first. Do not come up here," because his natural instinct was, bam, I got to get my friend down.
Mm-mm.
And if you can rely back on your training, we always teach, make sure that it's safe for you. Because if it's not safe for you, then you got two people injured up there, and who's going to help you now? And so when you ask somebody, hey, do you know how to, what's your Mayday procedure? What's the first thing that you say if on the radio? What's your Mayday procedure? Oh yeah, I know. Tell me. Let's do it. Let's
Mhm.
practice. Let's do the whole thing because it's really important.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'd say, just in general, you got your job plan for whatever job you're doing. Meaning this is stuff we got to accomplish, but then you're also thinking about your safety plan,
Yeah.
rescue plan. Um, what else is there that, sort of if you had to think about the top 4 or 5 things that a lineman really needs to know, or just a person that works around electricity, what's something else that comes to mind for you?
Yeah. It's got a lot to do with your personal protective equipment. And I'm not sure what makes some linemen want to take their rubber gloves off. And I was talking to a lineman, and he was going, why do I have to cover all this up if I'm just going to be doing this? And I said, well, why are you working so hard to take your gloves off? That is the number one thing that's going to save your life. I've been investigated accidents before, and most of them were a result of taking gloves off.
Mhm.
That's how you have your contact. And there's very few contacts that are like upper arm or anything. It's mostly hand and feet or hands and leg or hand in hand or something, but it almost always involves hands because they uncover them. So why do you do that? So that's really one. Grounding is another one. The grounding procedures are sometimes overlooked because it takes time. It takes time to put your grounds up. And I, I think of safety as like a scale because linemen want to be fast. So if you have speed on one side and safety on the other, it, if you get too fast, then you have to sacrifice safety to gain
Mhm.
speed. Well, if you need a certain number of line hoses and blankets and those sort of things to really cover up the work area properly, if you need 12 but you use 20, well now you're tilting this way, you're really slowing yourself down because you got to have a balance.
Yeah.
And if you find a balance, that's where you need to be. And you need to stay there. Use the right amount of safety equipment, but don't try to go faster than you can. Stay in that balance and be happy with it. Because if you want to get faster, a lot of times you have to sacrifice safety, and you gain speed, but you sacrifice safety.
Yeah.
So stay there.
I mean, how much do you see so again, most of the stuff that I'm familiar with to be more in like the manufacturing world, and there's sometimes we come across people who they just wear the 40 cal arc flash suit no matter what they're doing.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's great to be extra safe, but what that tells me is they don't quite understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand the risk assessment. They don't understand. They're just wearing wearing that because it makes them feel
Yeah.
more comfortable. But how often in the lineman world do you think that happens? Where they're
It,
almost
yeah, it happened a lot when flame retardant clothing was first mandated. It's gotten better. The clothing manufacturers have done a phenomenal job about making the clothing more wearable. Where it's a shirt like this, it's thin, it's not as hot. Because when it first came out, man, it was almost like put on a cardboard box. It was stiff. You couldn't move. It would chafe you. I mean, it was miserable. Well, now it's comfortable. So when I came up, we were wearing cotton t-shirts and nobody really batted an eye at it. But, and then when they came out with the flame retardant clothing, everybody was really afraid of it because of our experience. We just knew that this Nomex stuff, man, it is so hot. Well, some companies went way too far. They did like what you're talking about. They just put in the maximum. They
Yeah.
just put them in the thickest thing they could find and went, good luck, have fun with that. And there were a lot of heat injuries with that. So we've learned a lot about doing arc flash studies and really dialing that in. Also engineering controls. So the engineering controls in substations have come a long way to where you can open up a circuit if there's an issue before an arc even happens. It is so fast. So that really lowered the amount of clothing that you have to wear. There's other industries, especially like what you're talking about with inside wiring, where you don't have that luxury of engineering controls. And sometimes those, we call it the big keeper suit, the big arc blast suit.
Hmm.
Sometimes those are necessary, but they're not as necessary in the lineman world as in other industries. But you still got to wear them sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I think we're coming up on time. I mean, this has been fantastic. There's a lot of stuff that I'm sure people can take away and benefit from. Just to kind of close out, I don't know if you've got any speaking engagements coming up or anything like that that you want to share, maybe where people can reach out and find you.
Yeah, you can find me out. Look me up on LinkedIn is probably one of the best places to find me. I've few speaking engagements, but they're mainly for some of our customers with
Yeah.
NLC, and always open to speaking engagements. I love to talk about safety. It's if you haven't been able to tell, it's a big passion of mine,
Yeah.
and uh, I just I can go on for days and days about it. But I really am passionate about keeping alignment safe and not not being unreasonable with it, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
I try to come from a real world approach with it. I'm a lineman. I'm a rodeo guy. Uh, I rodeoed for years, and so I like to go fast. And uh, there's a way to go fast. I've said this a couple of times, and it I didn't coin the phrase, but I still use it. Um, Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. When I was on a rodeo team, we would get to a point to where we just couldn't get any faster. We couldn't shave off more time. So when we got to that point, we would make a conscious effort to slow down, to intentionally go slower. And what we would find is that we sped up
Mm.
because we made our moves count. We were, we were smoother. We didn't grab at things multiple times, and smooth will make you faster. So concentrate on that. But, love to talk to people. This has been great. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. No, it's been a pleasure. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man.